It's easy to get attached to depth, but even that attachment is a distraction. I should do the work on something deep. Is it true? When the mind wants to have a particular experience doing the work, it tries to set things up to get what it wants. This makes perfect sense, of course, because that's how we do things in the world. We set our sights on a goal, and then we do everything we can to get there. But this approach doesn't work so well when doing the work of Byron Katie. If I have a particular outcome in mind when doing the work, I actually limit the process. If I want to go deep, and my mind then becomes closed to the shallow end of life, which may actually be where balance can be found at times. And this is certainly my experience where I want to go deep. I'm almost addicted to that idea of depth. But many times in my life, the depth, I already have too much depth. Like I spend too much time in the deep end, and to come out and like spend some time in the shallow end, in the dry land, is actually more of a balance for me. And so it will be depending on all of us in each situation. But the point is, when my mind's open to seeing that both depth and shallowness are both good, then I'm free to let the work kind of work me, and to explore all sides of this in a very open and unbiased way. Having an open mind when doing the work means open to deep and open to shallow alike. Only then can the mind be free to explore in an unbiased way. When shallow and deep are equal, the mind does not discard anything on its search for balance. This goes for choosing a subject too. I remember when I first started doing the work, I saw the power of the process and I wanted to maximize it. I thought a good way to do that would be to bring up deep topics, painful issues, embarrassing stuff, trauma, that kind of thing. Then I would be getting to the core of everything with the work, or so I thought. The thing about these kinds of topics is that they do feel deep. Deep because I don't talk about them that often. They lie deep in my memory, and to bring them out feels like a big deal. So having the courage to bring up deep topics always felt important to me when I started doing the work. And I can say today I still enjoy bringing out deep topics from time to time. But the difference is today I no longer believe that these topics are better for doing the work, or that they're more important to work on. They're simply one aspect of my experience. Instead, I think of things a little more like that any situation can be a portal for the work. Over time, I've done the work on everything from the deep to the trivial. Big traumatic events from my past have come to be worked, and tiny, insignificant little rubs from daily life have been worked. My conclusion is that both are equally helpful to explore. Ironically, tiny little daily problems often contain the whole depth of my life as well. So from this perspective, every situation has depth. Every situation can bring me back home. And it's one of the neatest things to experience when you're working on some minute little annoyance or some little tiny daily stressful experience. And then as you're working this, you start seeing how many similar things have happened and how much your whole life is really contained even in that one moment. Shallow situations are actually often easier to explore. And so this is one advantage for working shallow situations. When someone doesn't reply to my text, for example, and I feel a little stress about it, it doesn't take this huge amount of courage to write a worksheet. It's so minor that there's little resistance to getting started. Now compare that to the huge amount of courage that's sometimes needed to face a big issue from the past. So the entry into doing the work is actually a lot easier when you're working on a shallow situation. Secondly, you don't have to get it right. When you're dealing with a shallow situation. I say shallow in quotes because I just don't even believe that term anymore. But it's not what I think of as deep. When I'm dealing with that kind of a situation, I don't have this pressure to find a solution when dealing with this kind of situation, because for me, the stakes are not very high. Like, who cares in the big scheme of things whether they responded to my text or not? It's not life or death. It's more like a curiosity. And that word curiosity I find to be really helpful when doing the work. When I'm doing things out of curiosity, my mind's really open. I have no idea what I'm going to find, and I'm really starting to explore things with an open mind. So the lack of pressure allows my mind to look freely in all directions when answering these questions of the work. And then finally, one other advantage of quote unquote shallow situations is that these minor types of situations are often very fresh in my mind. More often than not, I work these little moments of stress soon after they happen, which allows me to easily remember the details. And the good news is there's an unending supply of these little minor moments. Just look back over the past 24 hours. There's always a moment that could be an entry point for a worksheet. So readily available, easy to enter into, and no pressure to have a breakthrough. That makes an ideal situation for exploration with the work of Byron Katie. And when I give myself the permission to explore these small, seemingly minor situations, I often find that a lot of big things shift in my life without even trying to. So I invite you to gain experience diving in to any situation. And one way you can do this is by participating in the Work 101 course, which I offer usually 3 or 4 times a year. And this course allows you to go into one situation and spend a fair amount of time on it. We sometimes spend a couple weeks on one worksheet. We write a worksheet and then we go in depth on this worksheet and find what we can find there. It doesn't have to be a deep situation, but we actually kind of go deeply in these shallow situations, and it's amazing what you can find. So if you're interested in exploring this and getting more familiar with the work of Byron Katie and starting to become more self-sufficient in your ability to do this work, then I encourage you to join us for the Work 101. And you'll also get a chance to work through these worksheets and gain direct experience in the process. So let me close with a quote from Byron Katie, and this is from her book, Loving What Is, which is a great little book if you're interested in knowing what the work is and just kind of getting an understanding of what is possible. If you don't know what to write about, wait. Life will give you a topic. Maybe a friend didn't call you back when she said she would, and you're disappointed. Maybe when you were 5 years old, your mother punished you for something you didn't do. Maybe you're upset or frightened when you read the newspaper or think about the suffering in the world. All right, so these newsletters are something that you can subscribe to anytime. You can go to the workasmeditation.com and you'll find a lot of resources there. You'll find all the newsletters that I've ever written, a bunch of articles, hundreds actually. And you'll also find my podcast there, as well as open sessions like I mentioned earlier, and the Work 101 that I just mentioned. So a lot of resources for doing the work. The emphasis for me is on doing. You know, it's one thing to understand the work, get the idea of it, get the gist of it, but this work is a meditation practice, and I invite you to make it a practice if it interests you. And for that reason, I offer lots of programs and options to make that easy for you, including virtual retreats. If you haven't been on a virtual retreat, these are a lot of fun. it's a lot of chance to do a lot of work in a short amount of time. We actually do sessions around the clock, usually for a whole weekend. So no matter what your time zone, you can join us for a 2-hour session, and then see where you go. Okay, so with that, I'll leave you. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.